The fortress of Outpost DLX-9 perched on the edge of Terrace Moon's largest crater, like a metallic tumor, its volcanic foundation having been carved and reshaped by QR Imperium engineers into something that defied both nature and reason. Commander Vex Talon stood before the massive observation window in the command center, watching the crimson glow of Terrace's parent planet cast eerie shadows across the fortress's outer walls. 3 solar cycles of war between the QR Imperium and Earth Alliance had left scars across a dozen star systems, but this outpost remained untouched, impregnable. Commander. Lieutenant Zarn's four-armed form approached with characteristic precision, his datapad clutched in his lower left appendage, while his upper arms gestured at the scrolling biometric readings. The morning security sweep reports all sectors clear. No unusual readings in any of the monitoring zones. Vex nodded his elongated skull, reflecting the amber light of the command displays. The QR Imperium had spent considerable resources fortifying this position, installing the latest in biosecurity systems, neural detection arrays, and quantum-locked access points. Every molecule of air was analyzed, every vibration measured, every electromagnetic signature cataloged. Nothing moved within 50 kilometers of the outpost without triggering multiple redundant alarm systems. Good. Maintain standard protocols, Lieutenant. The Supreme Council's expectations for this facility remain absolute. Vex's mandibles clicked together in what passed for satisfaction among his species. The humans may have their creative approaches to warfare, but they have yet to find a way past traditional defensive measures. It was then that the first checkpoint guard, Sergeant Crix, performed an action that would later be described in military reports as unprecedented deviation from protocol. Without any detectable external influence, without receiving any orders, Sergeant Crix simply lowered his plasma rifle and stepped aside from his post at the main gate. The motion was fluid, almost ceremonial, as if he were welcoming an expected dignitary. The second guard, Private Yolth, followed suit within moments. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he moved to stand next to Crix, both soldiers, now flanking the entrance like an honor guard rather than a defensive barrier. Neither spoke. Neither appeared distressed. The biomonitors connected to their armor showed normal vitals, normal brain activity, normal everything. The outer gate, a massive construct of reinforced titanium-neodymium alloy capable of withstanding direct nuclear impact, began its opening sequence. No authorization codes had been entered. No biometric scanners had been activated. No emergency protocols had been triggered. The gate simply recognized that it should open, and so it did. Through this opening walked a human. He appeared utterly ordinary by human standards, wearing simple civilian clothes that would not have looked out of place in any Earth Alliance settlement. Brown hair, medium height, unremarkable features save for an expression of mild concentration, as if he were solving a moderately interesting puzzle. He carried no weapons, no equipment, no identification. He moved with the unhurried gait of someone taking a pleasant morning stroll through a park. The fortress's most sophisticated sensor arrays devices, capable of detecting the molecular signature of a single bacteria at 100 meters, registered his presence as a faint blip, barely worth noting. The alert systems that should have screamed warnings across every communication channel, instead, whispered gentle acknowledgments, as if this intrusion were part of the daily routine. Commander. Zarn's voice carried an edge of concern that Vex had rarely heard from his methodical science officer. We have an anomaly at the perimeter. A human has somehow bypassed our outer defenses. Vex turned from the observation window, his expression shifting from mild annoyance to focused attention. Explain. How did they penetrate the detection grid? That's the problem, sir. They didn't penetrate anything. The systems are functioning perfectly. They're simply not registering the intrusion as a threat. Zarn's manipulation of the datapad became more frantic. It's as if our own security measures are welcoming him in. On the main tactical display, Vex could see the human's progress marked as a green dot moving steadily through the fortress's outer rings. Gateway after gateway opened before him, each representing billions of dollars in research and development, each supposedly impossible to breach without proper authorization. "Deploy the inner perimeter guards," Vex commanded. "Full combat alert." Within minutes, 24 QR Imperium soldiers had taken positions along the humans' projected path. These were elite troops, veterans of campaigns against Earth Alliance special forces, equipped with the finest military technology the Imperium could produce. Their weapons were charged, their armor sealed, their training absolute. The human approached the first squad positioned at security checkpoint Alpha 7. Their squadron leader, Captain Thex, had survived more than 30 combat engagements against human forces. He knew their tactics, their unpredictability, their dangerous resourcefulness. He was prepared for anything. What he was not prepared for was the sudden, overwhelming urge to step aside. It wasn't fear. It wasn't hypnosis. It wasn't any form of mental control that he could identify. It was simply a profound understanding that moving aside was the correct action to take in this moment. The feeling was so natural, so reasonable, that Thex found himself questioning why he had ever thought to stand in the way. One by one, his soldiers followed suit. 24 of the Imperium's finest warriors, armed with enough firepower to level a city block, formed neat rows on either side of the corridor as the human passed between them. "What is happening to our soldiers?" Vex demanded, his mandibles clicking with agitation. "Are they under some form of mental attack?" Zarn consulted his instruments, cross-referencing biological readings with behavioral analysis protocols. "No signs of neural interference, Commander. No chemical agents detected. No electromagnetic anomalies. Their brain patterns are entirely normal. They're simply choosing to let him pass." The human had now reached the second security ring, where biometric scanners stood ready to analyze every aspect of an intruder's physical form. These devices were marvels of QR engineering, capable of building a complete genetic profile from a single breath, of detecting the faintest traces of explosive materials, of identifying species, specific pheromones, and neural patterns. The human walked through these scanners without slowing. The machines hummed their satisfaction, displaying green lights across every metric. According to their readings, this individual possessed valid clearance for all restricted areas, carried no contraband, and represented no threat to facility security. Vex watched in growing disbelief as tactical display after tactical display showed the human's unimpeded progress. Each barrier that fell revealed the next layer of defenses, and each new layer proved equally useless. "Sir," Zarn spoke carefully, "I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from the intruder's position. Nothing our computers recognize, but there's definitely something there." "Deploy the nerve gas protocols," Vex ordered grimly. "Full containment in sections 7 through 12. The fortress's emergency response systems engaged with mechanical precision. Reinforced blast doors sealed off an entire section of the complex, creating an airtight chamber around the human's position. Then came the gas, a cocktail of neurotoxins, specifically engineered to incapacitate any known biological form within seconds. For 3 minutes, sensors detected nothing moving within the containment zone. Vex allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. No organism could survive exposure to those toxins, regardless of species. When the all-clear sounded and the blast doors retracted, the human emerged from the dispersing gas cloud, with the same unhurried pace he had maintained throughout his incursion. His breathing was steady, his expression unchanged. The only difference was a slight wrinkle in his shirt where he had brushed against a wall. "Impossible," Zarn whispered. "No known physiology can process those neurotoxins. The cellular damage alone should have been catastrophic." Vex's tactical mind raced through possibilities. Enhanced immunity, genetic modification, protective technology too advanced to detect. All seemed plausible until dismissed by the sensor readings. The human showed no signs of technological augmentation, no trace of protective chemicals, No genetic markers indicating artificially enhanced resistance. Perhaps, Vex mused aloud, we are thinking about this incorrectly. Lieutenant, what if this individual isn't overcoming our defenses? Sir, what if our defenses are designed to let him through? It was a thought that made no sense yet seemed to explain everything. As if the fortress itself had been waiting for this specific person, as if every system had been programmed with secret instructions that activated only upon his approach. The human had now reached the inner sanctum, the most heavily protected area of the entire facility. Here lay the crown jewel of Outpost DLX-9, the experimental weapons vault containing prototypes, too dangerous for regular military use, too powerful for conventional battlefield deployment. The vault door was a work of art and paranoia, incorporating 7 different locking mechanisms, each requiring separate authorization from different command levels. The biometric scanners here were so sensitive, they could distinguish between identical twins by analyzing the quantum resonance of their cellular structures. The human approached this ultimate barrier and paused for the first time since entering the compound. He tilted his head slightly, as if listening to something only he could hear. Then he stepped forward and placed his palm against the main scanner. The vault door didn't just open, it welcomed him inside. Vex stared at the tactical display in absolute silence. Every protocol had failed. Every safeguard had simply stood aside. His fortress, his impregnable monument to QR engineering supremacy, had been penetrated by a single, unarmed human who seemed to carry nothing more dangerous than mild curiosity. Commander, Zarn's voice was barely above a whisper. He's in the vault. Inside the weapons storage chamber, surrounded by devices capable of reshaping matter at the molecular level of tearing holes in space-time itself, of redirecting gravitational fields across entire solar systems. The human moved with the careful deliberation of someone shopping for groceries. He examined each prototype thoughtfully, reading the technical specifications with apparent understanding. Finally, he selected a device no larger than a briefcase. According to the Vault's inventory system, this was the Quantum Destabilizer Mark VII, a theoretical weapon that existed more as proof of concept than practical application. The power requirements alone made it impossible to deploy under battlefield conditions, requiring a dedicated fusion reactor just to charge its primary capacitors. The human lifted the device with both hands, testing its weight. Then, impossibly, he tucked it under one arm like a portfolio and walked back toward the vault entrance. So, Sir, Zarn's voice had taken on a strange quality, as if he were reporting events that couldn't possibly be happening. Our security protocols are automatically updating his clearance level. He now has authorization to remove that device from the facility. Vex could only watch as the human retraced his steps through the fortress. The same soldiers who had stood aside for his entrance now nodded respectfully as he passed with his stolen prize. The same security systems that had allowed his infiltration now ensured his safe departure. At the main gate, Sergeant Crix and Private Yulth stepped aside with the same ceremonial precision they had shown upon his arrival. The massive doors opened wide, framing the human against the alien landscape of Terrace Moon. Before departing, the human turned back toward the fortress. For a moment, his gaze seemed to find the command center observation window, seemed to look directly at Vex across the kilometers of intervening space. He raised his free hand in what might have been a greeting or a farewell or something else entirely. Then he was gone, walking across the volcanic surface with no visible protection against the moon's toxic atmosphere, carrying a weapon that theoretically required a starship to transport. The fortress stood silent. Every system reported normal status. Every sensor confirmed that the facility remained secure and impregnable. According to official records, nothing had happened at all. "Lieutenant," Vex said, finally, his voice carrying the weight of absolute command authority. "Begin immediate analysis of all security footage. I want to understand every second of what just occurred." "Already underway, sir. But, Commander, there's something else. I'm detecting a transmission originating from the weapon he took. It's being broadcast on multiple frequencies, including direct channels to QR High Command. What kind of transmission? Coordinates, sir, for the Proyon system. Vex knew the Proyon system well. A collection of dead worlds and failed colonies officially classified as uninhabitable due to atmospheric toxicity and geological instability. It was precisely the kind of place where experimental weapons testing might occur without attracting unwanted attention. Sir, I'm also receiving communication requests from Grand Admiral Kurvash's flagship. The Supreme Council is demanding immediate reports on our security status. The implications struck Vex like a physical blow. Whoever this human was, whatever had just occurred, word was already spreading through the highest levels of QR Command. An unauthorized breach of their most secure facility, the theft of a prototype weapon, and most disturbing of all, the complete failure of supposedly infallible security measures. Over the following days, reports reached Outpost DLX-9 from across the Imperium's intelligence network. The stolen quantum destabilizer had been tracked to the fourth planet of the Proyon system, a barren world of crystalline formations and methane lakes. Long-range sensors detected the activation of a massive energy source on the planet's surface. What happened next would be remembered as the Proyon demonstration, an event that fundamentally altered the balance of power between the QR Imperium and the Earth Alliance. The planet simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed in the conventional sense, not shattered by explosive force, or consumed by fire. It was unmade, its atomic structure destabilized at the quantum level, until the fundamental bonds holding matter together simply released their grip on reality. In the space of 17 minutes, an entire world became an expanding cloud of elementary particles, broadcasting across every sensor array within 50 light-years. The demonstration was impossible to ignore, impossible to deny, and absolutely impossible to replicate using conventional QR technology. The energy requirements alone dwarfed the output of most stellar fusion reactions. Yet it had been accomplished by a single human with a device he could carry in his arms. 3 days later, QR High Command received an official communication from the Earth Alliance. The message was brief, cordial, and terrifying in its implications. The recent demonstration in the Proyon system represents just one example of human engineering capabilities. We remain committed to peaceful resolution of our current conflict and invite the QR Imperium to engage in serious diplomatic negotiations. The message was signed by someone identified only as Jack, Cultural Liaison and Technical Demonstrator. Vex stood once again before his observation window, watching data streams flow across the tactical displays. The war that had raged for 3 solar cycles was over not through conquest or surrender, but through a single demonstration of overwhelming capability. Commander Zarn approached with his characteristic precision, though Vex noted a new wariness in his science officer's movement. Grand Admiral Kurvash requests your immediate presence aboard the flagship Inevitable Victory. The Supreme Council has reached a decision regarding our next course of action. And what decision is that, Lieutenant? Complete withdrawal from Earth Alliance space, sir. All military operations are to cease immediately pending the establishment of formal diplomatic relations. Vex nodded slowly. He had expected as much. The QR Imperium was many things, but suicidal was not among them. The destruction of Proyon 4 had demonstrated that humanity possessed technology capable of ending not just battles, but entire civilizations. There's more, sir. You've been selected to serve as cultural attaché to the new Earth Alliance Embassy. Your assignment is to facilitate peaceful exchange between our species. The irony was not lost on Vex. From fortress commander to diplomat, from preparing for war to arranging cultural exchanges. Yet perhaps this was fitting, given that his fortress had been the first QR installation to truly encounter the new reality of human capabilities. Aboard the flagship Inevitable Victory, Grand Admiral Kurvash received Vex in her private strategy chamber. The Admiral was ancient, even by QR standards, her carapace bearing scars from a dozen major campaigns. She studied Vex with eyes that had seen the rise and fall of entire star systems. Commander Talon. Her voice carried the authority of absolute rank. You have witnessed something unprecedented. A single individual bypassed our most advanced security measures, stole our most dangerous prototype weapon, and used it to demonstrate capabilities that exceed our understanding of physics. Yes, Admiral. The Supreme Council has reviewed all available data. The human identified as Jack appears to represent a paradigm shift in Earth Alliance technology. We cannot match their capabilities, nor can we determine how they achieved them. Kurvash activated a holographic display showing the expanding particle cloud that had once been Proyon 4. This level of matter manipulation suggests mastery over fundamental forces that our science barely comprehends. We are faced with two options: continue a war we cannot win, or accept peace on terms that preserve what we can of QR sovereignty. The Council chooses peace. The Council chooses survival, Commander, and you will be our representative in ensuring that this peace serves both species. The Admiral's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. After all, you have more experience with human, unconventional approaches than any other officer in our fleet. 3 weeks later, Vex stood on the observation deck of a neutral station orbiting the binary stars of the Kepler Nexus. Before him, delegations from both the QR Imperium and Earth Alliance prepared for the formal signing of what historians would call the Treaty of Inevitable Understanding. The Earth Alliance delegation was surprisingly modest, consisting of a handful of diplomats, technical advisors, and cultural specialists. Among them stood the human known as Jack, dressed in the same simple civilian clothes he had worn during his infiltration of Outpost DLX-9. As the ceremony commenced, Vex found himself studying this unremarkable individual who had single-handedly ended a war. Jack seemed entirely comfortable with the formal proceedings, offering polite nods to QR dignitaries, even engaging in brief conversations through universal translators. During a pause in the ceremony, Jack approached Vex directly. His expression held that same mild concentration Vex remembered from the security recordings, as if he were still solving that moderately interesting puzzle. Commander Talon. Jack's voice carried no trace of malice or superiority. I wanted to thank you for maintaining calm during my visit to your facility. It could have gone quite differently if you had chosen to escalate. You knew I was watching. Of course. I found your tactical assessments quite insightful, actually. Your fortress really was impressively designed. Under normal circumstances, it would have been completely impregnable. Normal circumstances. Jack smiled, and Vex recognized the expression from the moment he had looked back at the fortress after his departure. One of the advantages of being human commander is that we rarely encounter normal circumstances. We tend to improvise. The weapon you took, how did you know it would work? I didn't, not entirely. But your engineers do excellent work. The theoretical framework was sound. It just needed someone willing to ignore the supposed limitations on its practical application. Jack paused, seeming to consider his words carefully. Humans have a saying, if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. We took that philosophy and applied it to quantum mechanics. The signing ceremony concluded with declarations of mutual respect, non-aggression pacts, and agreements for technological and cultural exchange. As the delegations prepared to depart, Jack handed Vex a small device, no larger than a communication pad. What is this? A gift from the Earth Alliance to the QR Imperium. Cultural exchange materials, literature, art, music, that sort of thing. But also something else. Jack's expression grew thoughtful. You might find our perspectives on defensive engineering interesting. We've developed some unconventional approaches to security. Vex accepted the device, noting its surprisingly lightweight. More demonstrations of impossible technology. More like suggestions for thinking outside established parameters. Your fortress was built to stop anyone who played by conventional rules. The problem with humans is that we wrote our own rules, printed them ourselves, and then used them as bookmarks in entirely different books. As the Earth Alliance delegation departed, Vex remained on the observation deck, watching their ships disappear into the stellar backdrop. In his hands, the gift from Jack felt warm, as if it contained something more than mere data files. Later, aboard his transport back to QR space, Vex activated the device. Among the cultural materials and technical documents, he found a personal message. Commander Talon, I hope this finds you well settled in your new role as cultural attaché. Peace between our species offers opportunities that war never could, and I believe your analytical mind will find these opportunities fascinating. Enclosed, you'll find some human perspectives on defensive philosophy. We discovered long ago that the strongest fortresses fall not to superior force, but to unexpected questions. Your fortress asked, how do we keep them out? The question it should have asked was, why do we want to keep them out? Consider this: the most impregnable defense is one that makes intrusion irrelevant. When someone can walk through your front door, and the result is peace rather than conquest, perhaps the defense succeeded in ways its designers never imagined. I look forward to our next conversation, whether it occurs in a fortress or a garden. With mild amusement, Jack. P.S. Your science officer, Lieutenant Zarn, asked excellent questions during my visit. If he's interested in cross-species collaboration, the Earth Alliance would welcome his insights into QR biometric technology. We have some ideas about improving interspecies security systems that might interest him. PPS. The quantum destabilizer prototype really was beautifully engineered. We've made some improvements to the design and would be happy to share our modifications, assuming such exchange fits within the bounds of our new treaty arrangements. Vex read the message 3 times each, reading revealing new layers of meaning. The human Jack hadn't just ended a war. He had fundamentally altered how both species thought about conflict resolution. By demonstrating overwhelming capability while offering peaceful cooperation, he had created a paradigm where strength served as the foundation for negotiation rather than domination. As Vex settled into his new role as cultural attaché, he found himself looking forward to the challenges ahead. The war between the QR Imperium and Earth Alliance was over, but the far more interesting task of building understanding between two radically different civilizations was just beginning. From his desk at the new QR Earth Alliance Cultural Exchange Center, established in neutral space near the Centauri Federation border, Vex would often remember that day when one human walked into their fortress and changed everything. The security recordings had been analyzed hundreds of times by QR scientists and military theorists, yet none could explain how Jack had accomplished what he did. Perhaps Vex mused as he reviewed applications for joint research projects that was precisely the point. Humans didn't just overcome impossible challenges, they redefined the meaning of impossible itself. 2 years later, when the first joint QR Human Research Station was established, and Lieutenant Zarn sent reports of breakthrough discoveries in trans-species biometric recognition, Vex received another message from Jack. Commander, I trust you're finding the diplomatic life engaging. I've heard excellent reports about the cultural exchange programs you've initiated. Who knew that QR mathematical poetry would prove so popular among human artists? I wanted to update you on a small matter. Remember the fortress on Terrace Moon? We've been invited to collaborate on its conversion into a research facility for studying defensive technologies. The QR High Command has requested that the Earth Alliance provide input on what they're calling adaptive security measures. The irony is delicious, isn't it? The fortress that couldn't keep one human out might become the foundation for security systems that protect both our species. I'll be visiting the facility next month to discuss the project. Perhaps you'd like to join me. I suspect you might enjoy seeing your old command from a new perspective. After all, the best fortresses are those that become unnecessary. With continuing mild amusement, Jack. P.S. I've enclosed specifications for the improved quantum destabilizer design. Your weapons teams were concerned about power supply limitations, so we solved that by making the weapon generate its own pocket dimension for energy storage. Simple, really, once you stop thinking about conservation of energy as an inviolable law and start treating it as more of a strong suggestion. Vex laughed, a sound that still felt strange, even after 2 years of peaceful relations with humanity. Jack's postscript alone contained enough revolutionary physics to keep QR scientists busy for decades, delivered as casually as a recipe for cooking. He composed his reply that same day. Jack, I would be honored to visit Outpost DLX-9 with you. I'm curious to see how humans approach the renovation of impossible fortresses. Regarding the quantum destabilizer improvements, our scientists are equally fascinated and terrified by your casual violation of physical laws. Dr. Thek from the University of Korth has requested permission to study your designs. He's convinced that human technology operates on principles that exist somewhere between engineering and philosophy. I must admit I'm beginning to understand why your species has such success with impossible challenges. You don't solve problems. You convince the universe that the problems never existed in the first place. I look forward to our continued collaboration and to seeing what other impossible things become possible. With deep respect and occasional bewilderment, Commander Vex Talon, Cultural Attaché. P.S. Lieutenant Zarn sends his regards. He submitted a research proposal for joint development of probability-based security systems, which apparently means building defenses that work by making intrusion statistically unlikely. I blame you for encouraging his already creative approach to physics. As Vex sent the message, he reflected on the strange turns that life could take. 3 years ago, he had been a fortress commander preparing for war. Now he was a diplomat building bridges between civilizations and genuinely enjoying the work. The war was over, ended not by superior firepower or strategic brilliance, but by one human who walked into their fortress and walked out again carrying a message of peace, written in the language of overwhelming capability. History would record the event in various ways, but Vex preferred the simple truth. One human walked into their fortress. No one walked out. Because by the time Jack left the fortress, the war and the universe itself had become something entirely different. And that Vex had learned was the most human thing of all.